Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thanks, Gary. Steve, alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. I want to thank you for putting this, whatever the heck this thing is right here on the left, because it feels like it's going to be eyeballing me the whole meeting, and some kind of body piercing thing. I'm not sure what's going on here, but thank you very much. And you've all been very kind and generous. I really, Albert, that cooking meat in a toxic 55-gallon drum, that's a fantastic thing. And I really appreciate your giving me your kindest and gentlest ambassador, Mike, who's just, and Mike, I salute you. So I want you to know it's good to be in Tracy. My wife asked me where that was, and I said, I don't know. I don't know. I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Sacramento. Some guy's going to pick me up, and I'm going. Because that's what we do. You know, and I was fortunate enough to have Jay. Jay's been taking me around all day. Thank you very much, Jay. You're a great guy. I really appreciate that. And I was able to sit in on a number of the meetings. I got to hear Terry. That was a great talk. I got to hear Robin, who was smarter than the rest of you. She's left. She's not here. And Fernando. Did Fernando split? Smart man. Fernando left too. But he gave a great talk. He gave a great talk. And you're here. And I'm here. So I'm going to talk. And one of the things that my grand sponsor told me a long time ago, he reminded me, he used to talk a lot before he passed away. And he basically imparted in me the belief and the understanding that this is the least important thing I do in Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolutely. Okay, I got it. It's all right. The least important thing I do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think the most important thing I do is sponsorship, and I'll talk a lot about that tonight. But he told me a long time ago that if I don't drink before and after the meeting, it's a good meeting. So I intend on having a good meeting. I don't know what you guys are going to do, but I'm going to have a good meeting. And there's a number of you that are pretty new. Could you raise your hands again? All right, I got to ask, in the green, what's your name, young lady? Yeah, you. Mare? You don't look too happy to be here. I mean, I just noticed that you seem to be sandwiched between two ladies, so you can't escape. And you know, I'm not trying to judge. I'm just, you don't look too happy. Is that accurate? Oh, and you say it like you mean it. Yeah, peace out. All right. Welcome, Mary. Yeah. No, the reason why I say that is because when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I just, like Fernando, I hated it. I mean, I thought it was a bad idea. I thought it was an overreaction. I could understand why you needed to be here, but I just wanted no part of it. Absolutely no part of it. And I got to tell you, I've been here since the day I got here, July 27th, 1996. I've been sober ever since. A lot of people talk about relapse and it's the road to recovery, and I got to tell you, that's not my experience. And my experience is that doesn't have to be your experience. If it is your experience, it's your experience. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, because I had no intention of getting sober, none whatsoever. And I started drinking, you know, I didn't think it was that early. I was 8 years old, and I thought I drank pretty normally for an 8-year-old, you know, nothing out of control. And the way I drank as an 8-year-old was, we grew up in Las Vegas, and it's hot there, and I had to do the chores, and I had to do the chores with my older brother Tom. And when we got done doing the chores, my parents didn't mind if I went and pulled a beer. We had a pony keg inside a fridge in a little shed in the backyard. We called that the bar. And my parents were totally cool with my brother and I going and pulling a beer, and I loved it. I loved beer from the get-go. A lot of people didn't like the taste. I thought it was golden amber. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I loved it. And I loved the effect. But I didn't like the chores so much. And And I had to do the crappy chores. And I really mean literally the crappy chores. I had to pick up the dog crap. And we had a fiendish dog that would crap like, I mean, all over the place. And I would have to pick up all the crap before my brother would mow. And, you know, I noticed that I'm 4, I'm picking up the dog crap. I'm 5, I'm picking up the dog crap. Now, by the time I'm 8, I'm still picking up the dog crap. And my brother's been mowing, as far as I can recall, since he was 6 or 7 years old. So I go to my parents and I say, you know, I got the skill set to do this. I think I should be able to mow. I don't want to pick the dog crap all the time. I think Tom should do it. And we would have this long discussion, and I would always lose. And they would explain to me, you're the younger brother, you have to pick up the dog crap. Now, I didn't know it. I mean, at the time, I just thought it pissed me off, but I had a resentment. Now, I hadn't been to AA, I didn't have the book, I didn't read about resentments, I didn't know I had a resentment, but I had a resentment. So what I would do is I would go out, and I would pick up all the dog crap, almost, except for one big wet clump in the tall grass. And I would leave that, and I would go to the bar, and I would pull a beer, and I would take my beer, and I would stand next to the building of my house. I'd look at my brother, I'd drink the beer, and I'd say, Tom, I picked up all the dog crap, go with God. And I'd look at him, he'd eyeball me, he knew something was up, but you know, he'd sit there and he'd mow, and I'd be drinking my beer and he'd mow, and this is the early 60s, so we had a gas mower, but we didn't have a bagger. So he's don't get ahead of me. You know, he's mowing and I'm drinking the beer, you know, and he finally gets to the big clump in the tall wet grass and he hits it and he's just covered with dog crap. And he looks at me and I look at him and he knows exactly what happened. So he chases me down into the street and he just beats the crap out of me. You know, and my parents yell at me and I get on restriction. And I swear, I promise to God, I'll never do it again, and I mean it. I mean, I have had my butt whooped, I've got restriction, I got in trouble, I'm sure I'm never gonna do it again, and again, I'm 8 years old, I don't have the big book, I don't know I'm a jaywalker, I don't know I'm destined to do the same thing over and over and over again, despite knowing the unbelievably painful consequences. You know, I don't understand that I'm 8 years old and I've got alcoholic insanity. I don't know that, nobody explained that to me. You know, it wouldn't have done any good, but that's what I did. And I would do it over and over and over again. And I had a very strange childhood. And my wife thinks it's not quite over yet. And to give you an idea, some of the things that I would do when I was really young, I had read, you know, Tara, you talked about reading a lot of books. When I was really young, I was, 3.5, 4 years old, I read Mark Twain's A Prince and a Pauper. And the storyline there is there's a prince and there's a pauper and they're mixed at birth. And so I became convinced that there was a mix-up. You know, because I couldn't possibly be with his family. I mean, there's a mistake. And at some point in time, somebody's going to come and they're going to claim me. And then they'll get fixed. It never happened, but I just waited for that. And I also had real perception problems, bordering on real psychological delusions. I mean, for example, I was convinced that I could fly. And so to manifest this, I would get up on the roof with my cape and I would jump off the roof. I was not very aerodynamic, and I would splat. I would go to the hospital, and they would take me to a psychiatrist because you can't fly. But I was convinced that if I just got a run and start, I'd take off because I couldn't be like you. I was convinced I could breathe underwater. I was at the Officers Club pool at Nellis Air Force Base. I aspirated water into my lungs, almost drowned. They had to take me off because I just don't get it. And it took me quite some time. And, I don't know, for me, the book talks about crossing the line. I don't really identify with crossing the line. I knew that somewhere in the range of high school and college, I knew I was an alcoholic. But the way I defined alcoholism, and the way I defined alcoholism was I was powerless over alcohol, the first half of the first step. Again, I didn't have the book, never been to AA, didn't know anything about life being unmanageable. Couldn't have convinced me back then that my life was unmanageable. It clearly was. I went away to college, a place called Claremont, down south of Los Angeles, got kicked out of college 5 times, all in relation to alcohol. And I knew I was an alcoholic, but to me, that seemed to be more your problem than my problem. And by that I mean it really inconvenienced you and pissed you off a lot. But I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm self-seeking. I don't even really like you. So if you're upset, I'm willing to pay that price that you don't like. I don't really care, because I don't even think I want to drink. It's what I do. I don't really think about it. It's what I do. So I drink and I get in a lot of trouble. And eventually what happened was I went off into the Army. And before I went off into the Army, I had gotten into a little trouble down in Claremont. I was in ROTC at the time, and I was supposed to go off to law school. I had gotten an educational delay. And about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd been out partying all day. I'd been drinking a lot. And I get kind of emotional. And I'm really kind of a caring and gentle guy. And around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I realized I was supposed to go see my girlfriend that day. And I knew she was going to miss me desperately, and I didn't want to disappoint her. And I weighed a lot less then. I had hair. You just have to take my word for it. I was relatively cute. And I knew she'd be terribly disappointed, so I went to see her at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And what I did was I went in, I was going to go in the back door, and I did go in the back, and there's a porch there, and I took a little flower pot and I put it on my head so I could sing a little song coming in, because I knew she'd think that was cute. The problem is in Claremont they have row houses, and they look a lot alike, and I was about 3 blocks off. So the house I went into, the guy was not happy. He took a shot at me. He shot the pot off my head. My immediate defensive reaction was to wet my pants and crumple to the floor and do the fish. And they took me off to jail, and they arrested me for burglary, because when you go into a dwelling at night, that's burglary. They don't like that. They're not fond of that at all. And I went in front of the judge, and I was convicted of a felony. But he said, we're going to expunge your record if you stay out of trouble in the state of California for a year after you graduate. I said, okay, I can do that. And, I'm alcoholic. That's easy. I just got to leave California because I know I'm going to get in trouble, so I got to get out of California. So I'm supposed to get an educational delay, but what I do is I go in and I say, forget that, I just need to go outside the continental United States. I said, well, kind of like Fernando. Fernando wanted to be a photographer, wanted to be a cameraman. They said, well, you can be in the infantry. So I'm in the Army. I go through infantry officer basic course. I go through airborne school. I go through ranger school. I did very well in ranger school. Not because I'm particularly smart, not because I'm particularly physically adept, but they have something there called the bear pit. And the bear pit is this, they call it hand-to-hand. We call it hand-to-gland, but we do hand-to-hand combat. And basically they have this procedure where towards the end of the first phase, you'll fight. It's like Fight Club. And basically the last man standing gets a certain award. And I got to about the 4th guy, and the guy who eventually won, a guy named Sergeant Pease, just very unceremoniously picked me up on my head and threw me down really hard. And he popped out my shoulder and dislocated my shoulder. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you're done. You're going to be what they call recycled. And but here's a prescription for Darvon. And it wasn't like I was a tough guy, but I didn't want to go through the training again. So I didn't tell him about that. I took that slip of paper and I just threw it away. But I kept the slip for Darvon because, And in fact, I made 5 copies of it. And I went out and I got that prescription filled and refilled across the fort. And I think I had 500 count things of Darvon. I had all this industrial Darvon. And I smuggled it up to phase 2 in the mountains. And I was the kind of guy when, Tom, that's a wicked blister. Wicked. You want some Darvon? Terry, that's a bitch of a hangnail, buddy. You want some Darvon? So I'm giving Darvon to my whole platoon, and everybody's happy, and they're not going to let me get hurt. So I'm passing all my patrols, and they're watching my back. So I didn't fail anything, so I graduated #1 in my class. And what that means in the Army is that you're supposed to be destined for high things. And I go off to Korea, and I'm in Korea for about 6 months, and a guy shows up and says, I'm a recruiter for Special Forces. And you graduated #1 in your class. We normally don't take first lieutenants, but would you like to come through the program? And at that time, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and they were offering additional TDY, which is temporary duty, and potential language school and all kinds of interesting stuff. And I thought, yeah, sure, I'll go do it. So I did that, and I went through Special Forces training. I did very well, and I went up to 10 Special Forces Group, which is at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. But I spent most of my time over in the Middle East. And in 1983, for 6 months, I was over in Beirut, Lebanon. And I left about I left 4 days before the Marine barracks was blown up, the BLT was blown up, and I was there when the embassy was blown up. And it was really, you know, frankly, like the Wild West with guns and automatic weapons and howitzers and a lot of vehicles. And in a general way, I can tell you that I did a lot of bad things to a lot of bad people in Lebanon. And I did a lot of bad things to a lot of good people in Lebanon. And that had to be on my 9th step amends list. And it was not easy, it was not comfortable. And I gotta tell you, making amends to a country is not easy. It's not easy. But I had a lot of guilt and I had a lot of uncomfortability about that. But not at the time. At the time, I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm self-seeking. I could care less. I could care less. There's not a bone in my body, not a nerve in my body that has any compassion for you. I don't care. I come back and they send me to law school. They sent me out to USC. I go to law school. It's 3 years. I rapidly learn that last 2 years you get to choose all your own classes. So what I do is I make sure that they start around Tuesday at 2 and end Wednesday at about 9 a.m. You know, because I got things to do in between. I'm a busy guy, and I'm just drinking like crazy. And my idea, I love to drink. You know, I like to drink beer and shoot tequila. I just love it. I mean, I've convinced myself that I'm really good at it. I also get to the point where, in my delusional mind, I start thinking, you know, all the really great trial lawyers, they're alcoholic. Like, even the great writers. I mean, think about it. Hemingway, alcoholic. Edgar Allan Poe, alcoholic. I'm alcoholic. No big deal. You know, it makes me more creative. It makes me good. And, I graduated from law school and I wind up going back in through the Army, and I'm a JAG. I'm a JAG officer for 6 years. And during this time, I acquire a wife. I got a kid. I know it's true. I still got him. And, these things just kind of happen to me. And I'm really, it's kind of strange because I'm doing really well in the Army. They think I'm doing really well. I wind up getting promoted early to major, and they send me to the Pentagon. And I'm in the Pentagon, and my job is intelligence oversight. And what that means is I'm responsible to go around the country and around the world to certain Army units and individuals that are either on the books or not on the books, and they're being paid for through other funds. And I have to make sure that it's reported up through Congress that these people are doing appropriate things because they're working with other intelligence agencies. So everything is really classified, it's really secret, and I am drinking really heavily at this time. And what's going on is I've got an office in what's called the D ring of the Pentagon. And in there's an office called International and Operational Law. And it's got a cipher lock on the outside of it. And what that is just a nine-digit keypad that you have to press a certain sequence in to get in. And everybody in my office is in there, but towards the back, there's something called a SCIF, which is a Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, and that's a separate keypad. And I'm the only one with that combination. So what happens is I've got what's called blanket travel orders. And that means I don't have to get approval from a boss. I can go anywhere in the world, and I can basically inspect these units because I need to report. And then just come back and I can submit my own travel vouchers and I can get paid for them. And what would happen is I would leave for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and I would come back and people would go, well, where you been? I'd say, well, I can't tell you that. It's classified. And the reality is, I would check the ticket stubs, but I'd go, Manila? I mean, I don't even remember being in Manila. It was, and it was, it was a little, it concerned me a little bit, but not a whole lot. But what did concern me a lot was I would come back after 3 or 4 weeks and I'd forgotten all the combinations. So I would wait till, like Tom's going in the office. And I'd wait and Tom would persecute. I'd walk in and then I'd go to my office. And that particular cipher lock, if you do it 3 times in a row, it will lock out. And there's an alert system and it will go through an information manager and then, it's really embarrassing. And I think it's close, so I'd lean my head up because the door was metal and it was nice and cool. And I remember it was calming and I'd go, okay, I think I got it. Boop, 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 boop. And I'd go through this a couple times, and it would lock out. And I would have to go see this guy, Whit. I had his number, he had my number in his safe. I never had to give Whit his number, ever. It seemed like every 2-3 months, hey, Whit, can you go in your safe? I forgot my number. It was embarrassing. So what I did was I quit. I resigned from the Army. Because one of my jobs was, I've been selected early for major. I've been in 13 and a half years. I just do 6.5. I got a pension. And one of my jobs is I review personnel jackets. And Fernando, before he escaped tonight, talked about this. And what it would be is it would basically have your record in it. And it would usually be some event that you did. And basically by this time, 1993, there's no tolerance for alcohol or drugs at all. None. And I would have to recommend through the Department of the Army and the General Counsel whether to keep somebody or not, or court-martial. And I kept thinking, man, I'm gonna be looking at my jacket soon. I'm gonna be looking at my jacket. Because I'm driving drunk all the time, and I'm not gonna stop drinking, so I just gotta quit. So I resigned. I joined a large international law firm. I came out here to Los Angeles, and I'm trying cases. And to give you an idea what it was like towards the end of my drinking, I had a case that was in trial in downtown Los Angeles. And I had stayed up pretty much all night the night before doing trial prep. And what trial prep means for me is I drink beer and I shoot tequila. And I drink beer and I shoot tequila and I think about stuff. And then I drink a little more beer and I shoot a little more tequila and I think about it a little bit more. And about 2:30 in the morning, boom, it just comes in and I got it. I know what I'm gonna do. I know what the examination's gonna be. It's crystal clear. Now I need a little power nap. I pass out. I don't realize. I go out maybe for an hour or two. I get up, I take a shower, I go to court. And I had done this particular day. And I got up and I still got a little bit of a buzz going on. But I'm not where I was at 2:30 and we're picking a jury. And we're in downtown LA and we're picking a jury and it's about 11:30 in the morning. And I don't think we'd quite finished picking the jury. And the case settled because the judge was pushing for settlement and my client Brian had settled the case and it was very profitable for him. It made him basically, I think, $11-12 million. He was very, very, very happy businessman. And he says to me, he says, Lamb, I know it's only 11:30, but do you want to go have a drink? I was like, oh man, are you kidding me? I thought I was going to have to wait till 5:30. This is excellent. And you're buying? Yeah, Brian, that'd be great. Let's go have a drink. So we go to this place called the Grand Avenue Bar. You talked about the Biltmore. The Grand Avenue Bar is right underneath, kind of alongside the Biltmore Hotel. It's really kind of a high-end sports bar. And we go in there, and I drink beer and I shoot tequila, but Brian is from New York. He's kind of a workout specialist. He's from a lot of money. And he walks in and he says, so let's have the cognac off the top shelf, the dusty bottle. So the bartender brings it down and he takes out 2 brandy snifters and he starts pouring the cognac. And I'm watching him and Brian's watching me and he can tell I'm a bit confused. And he says, you've never had cognac before, have you? I said, no, I never have. You're buying. I'm willing to, I'll take a risk, but I've never had it before. So he says, okay, look, pay attention. This is what you do. It's really important. What you want to do is you want to take the cognac in the brandy snifter and you want to coat it in the glass. You want to twirl it around. And the warmth from your hand will warm up the cognac, and that's important because that will release a lot of the flavor and it will release the bouquet from the cognac. And what you want to do is you want to bring it up to your nose. You don't want to snort it. You don't want to sniff it. You just want to let the vapors waft across your nostrils. And then you want to back it down. You don't want to drink it. You don't even want to sip it. You just want to allow the cognac to drape across your palate, whatever the hell that is, so that you can get the full impact of the cognac. I'm thinking, whatever, So I get the cognac, and it's swirling around, and it's really pretty warm, So I go up to waft, and I get it up, and I'm gonna waft, and I intend to waft, and I get it up there, and apparently it hits my nose, and bam! I just drink it. I shoot it just like tequila, and I gotta tell you, I don't think about it. I didn't think I'm gonna shoot this cognac. I just, it just happened. It would surprise me as much as it did Brian. And he looks, he said, what the hell are you doing? That's $200 a shot. I said, oh, man, I'm sorry. Can I have a beer? Come on, And so I'm drinking beer. And he's doing what he's doing with his cognac, and his little pinky's out, and I'm drinking beer. And, I've had about 3 or 4 beers, so I'm not where I was at 2:30, but I'm kind of getting there. I'm feeling okay. And he says, okay, let's do it again. Pay attention. I said, okay, and I'm thinking, I can do this now. I'm kind of warmed up. I'm ready. Put me in, coach. I can do this. And I get up there and I twirl it around, and I'm thinking, don't snort it. So I'm like holding my breath, and I get up, bam, and I drink it again, and it's gone. And he looks at me with that look of disgust. That if you're alcoholic, you all know that look of disgust. And he's about to become one of many ex-clients. And he shakes his head. He says, "Oh man, I said, "Well, look, it's about 1 o'clock, and I gotta call New York and tell him the good news. So I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna take off." And I know he's about to be an ex-client, and it doesn't really bother me. I'm just, whatever. Again, you're the price I'm willing to pay. So I'm sitting there, I'm drinking my beer, I'm minding my own business. He's in the bathroom, and I look over, and I see his cognac. And I swear to God, I didn't think, I just, bam, and I drank that. So I go to the bathroom, and I'm coming out of the bathroom, and Brian's up, and he's arguing with the bartender, because somebody stole his cognac. And I come up and I said, "Oh man, somebody stole your cognac? I don't know if you know this, but I'm a trial attorney, and I'm going to help you cross-examine." No, because I can figure this out. I mean, come on, Tom, look at me, eyeball, come on. You took it, right? Brian's not stupid. He's now an ex-client. He's just shaking his head, and he's leaving. And I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to drink the way I want to drink. Because I don't know about you, I would go to a bar. If you're buying, Tom, I'll drink with you. Robin this morning said, she hates scotch. You just got to stick to it. You can work through all these little problems. And, but I like to drink alone. I like to drink alone because there's all kinds of people in here. I entertain myself. I don't know. And so I'm sitting there, I'm drinking beer, I'm shooting tequila. I'm drinking beer, I'm shooting tequila. I'm getting totally drunk. And about 8 o'clock at night, a lot of guys, they drink and they don't eat. Not me. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't missed a lot of meals. I didn't miss any that day. I got a light snack, maybe a pizza or two, And I sit there and I drink beer and I shoot tequila, and I don't mean to be gross and I don't mean to be disgusting, but I am. And I gotta apologize. This is just part of my story. I want you to know the story that I wanted was I'm drinking beer and I'm shooting tequila. This gorgeous all-girl rock band comes in. They see me, they want me. I say, okay, I'll do it. They capture me. They take me on a road trip from hell. I mean, we're talking sex and drugs, and I've got video. I can prove it to you. And I was ready. I was ready, but they never came. What happens is I drink beer, I shoot tequila, I have a couple pizzas, and I just start farting. I'm talking the whole, Purple Haze thing. I'm ripping them off. There's a little minor musical melody going on here. And, people are looking at me in disgust, and that just makes me crack up even more, because I just don't like people. So I'm drinking beer, I'm shooting tequila, I'm farting like a dog. And I have this real perception problem when I'm drinking. And, I remember I looked across the room, and there's a couple women in there, 40, 50 feet away, and they're looking at me. And I can't really see them because it's kind of hazy. But I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, they want me. There's no question. There's no question because I have a real perception problem. I have this Kreskin-like ability when I drink. I can read your mind. I can read your mind, and I can teleport my thoughts into your mind. It's like a Vulcan mind belt. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful. And they're probably looking at me and they're probably talking to each other, going, "Did that guy just cough up a chunk of pizza? I mean, what the?" But I'm thinking they want me, and I have no concept of reality. So I'm drinking beer, I'm shooting tequila, and I'm farting. And I go to just rip a huge one. I lift my leg, I go to let it go, and I miscalculate. You laugh now. But at the time, it's very important to act cool, And it's also critical, absolutely critical, to keep the leg cocked. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, I forgot about this part of the drinking. You'd think I'd remember. It's happened a couple times, not the first time. And I get up and I go to the bathroom and I go in the stall and I take off my jacket and I take off my pants, I take off my drawers. I clean myself up, I put my pants back on, I put my jacket back on, I'm out at the sink rinsing my drawers out, you know? Yeah, you know, there's a guy who looked at me just like that. He's like, what are you doing? And I look at him, and I'm like, what's your problem? You don't practice hygiene? Come on. So I get him rinsed out a little bit, you know, and I go back into the stall, I take my jacket off, take my pants off, I put my wet drawers on, I put my pants back on, I put my jacket on, now I got a little fart filter going on. I'm good to go, and I'm walking out, and they're kind of damp. And, you know, again, I get this perception problem. I'm thinking, I feel kind of sexy. You know, now I'm the most disgusting beast you've ever seen. People are just clearing a swath, and I'm thinking, yeah, here I come, baby. You know, who's your daddy now, baby? You know, I mean, I'm just crazy. I'm just crazy. I don't know what. And so I drink, and then finally the bar closes, and I go home. And I get home, and I park on the street or in the driveway, your driveway, my driveway, I don't really care. And the important thing for me is in where I lived in North Redondo at the time, I go into the garage, and in the garage there's 3 steps that go up to the living room. And right next to those 3 steps is a little fridge. It's always got beer in it. It is physically impossible for me to make it up those 3 steps without getting a beer. I don't care how much I drank that night. I don't care if I can't even hardly stand. I don't think about it. I don't think, oh, I need a beer. It's there. It's what it's there for. It's who I am. I don't think about breathing. I don't think about drinking. I just get it, and I get that beer, and I drink that beer as I'm walking up the stairs. I put the beer on the nightstand. I go to sleep next to my lovely wife. And on a good night, maybe I get up and I stagger around, and maybe I pee in the waste can, I go in the closet, I get in her boots or something. On a bad night, I wet the bed. Yeah, I basically drink to excess. I crap myself with alarming regularity, and I pee the bed. I'm a vision for you. There's no question. I mean, who wouldn't want me? When I came to AA, my wife really, she was like, no, really, you keep him. You don't have to give him back. I don't want. I'm done with it. And finally, I get a DUI. I'm coming from the Anaheim Pond where I'd been drinking these Japanese beers with a client, and I didn't have enough. And so I'm driving home, and I know I can't. I mean, it's a long way to that little fridge. So I find a bar. It's a Japanese karaoke bar. And I go in, I'm a big old white guy, and there's all these little Japanese guys, and I go up to the bar and I say, I need a beer. And the bartender says, you sing? I said, no, really, I don't sing, man. I just want a beer. I said, no, you sing. I said, no, really, I just want a beer. No, you no sing, you no beer. I'm singing. I'm singing. Well, what do you got? I'm up there, I'm belting out tunes. I've now got my favorite little friends around me. It's like I got the little dwarves around me and the munchkins, and we're talking, and we're just, I'm drinking beer, and we're slamming sake, and I don't even know what the hell they're saying, but we're tight, we're bonding. And then, that closes, and I got to go home, and I'm driving home, and the lights go on, and I get pulled over. And this has happened before, and I've actually prosecuted DUIs. In a former life, so I know, the alphabet backwards, and I know the field sobriety test, and we're doing the field sobriety test. And I'm thinking, well, this is going pretty good. It really is. I mean, doing the alphabet backwards, and we're talking, and I'm actually thinking, again, a perception problem. We're bonding. I kind of like this guy. Maybe I'll take him to the next game, I don't know. And then he asked me a question which I still think today is unfair. He says, Mr. Lamb, what freeway are you on? And I'm thinking, I've been kind of busy here, I mean, I know I'm headed north. And what I said was, I said the 405, and I was on the 22. So I was off considerably, if you know the freeway system down in Southern California, and I went to jail. And I went in front of the judge, and the judge knew me, and he said, Mr. Lamb, was your client? And I said, that would be me, and that's not good. That's not good. And I pled guilty, and I got sentenced to a horrific sentence. I mean, just horrific sentence. I couldn't believe it. I had to pay a fine. I was okay with that. I had driver's training, and I was okay with that. But that judge, he sentenced me to 6 AA meetings in 6 months. Oh, it was brutal. I mean, I think it's unconstitutional. And I didn't want to go. So again, I'm driving to driver's training, because I don't have a driver's license, on my bike. I stop at a 7-Eleven before the class, and I get a 40. You know, it's a long class, you know. And I'm in there, and I remember the very first day, there's a drug and alcohol counselor there. His name is Cliff. And Cliff is kind of on fire for AA, but he's in this non-AA program, but he's kind of trying to push people to AA. And so he says, you know, everybody's here for, you know, a drug or alcohol-related offense, and is anybody in here just, by chance, an alcoholic? I raised my hand. I was the only one. And the room had, you know, 50, 60 people in it. And Cliff is really says, hey, man, that's great. That's the first step in recovery. And I'm thinking, dude, I had a 40 on the way in. I'm going to have a 40 on the way out. Get over it. You know, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I know I'm alcoholic. Just calm down. It's going to be okay. And obviously, I did not get sober then. And then finally, I have 5 weeks left to do 6 AA meetings. And, you know, I mean, look, I went to law school because I'm not that great at math, but that's more than one a week. More than one a week. I mean, I didn't even know if it could be done. I'm just freaking out. I'm thinking I'm going to go to prison. I don't think I'm going to do well in prison. And finally, July 27th, 1996, I go to my first AA meeting. I go to a morning meeting at the Hermosa Beach Alano Club. And if you've been down there, it's a small clubhouse. There's a coffee bar, and there's double doors from the coffee bar, and those doors are normally closed. It was late. The meeting had started, and I walked through the double doors because, you know, I have arrived, you know? And they're all sitting there, and they're all looking at me. And the way the meeting is set up there is to the left as you walk in the doors, there's a countertop like this table where they set up cakes and cookies, and they do birthdays. And to the right, there's a coffee urn. And the coffee urn is not supposed to have a chair in front of it. The chairs are actually out in front, and they're perpendicular. So you're facing me, but they're all facing inward towards each other, but they're looking this way because someone is up here doing a birthday. And what I do is I go and I just sit down in the chair next to the coffee urn. And I sit there, and there's a lot of lovely, nice people whom I detested at the time, but they're in this AA meeting, and they're looking at me, and there's empty chairs, and they're waving at me. Come here. Sit here. I'm like, no. No, I'm shaking my head. I mean, I made it this far. Don't push me. You know, I mean, and I'm sitting there, and I don't remember a lot about the meeting, but there's a person there, and this is my first day of sobriety. You know, and I don't know that. I have no plans on getting sober or much less staying sober. And they're doing birthdays, and people are saying like these horrific things, and people are laughing. And it doesn't seem very funny to me. And then they sit down and they start, it's a participation meeting, so they're sharing. And I don't remember a lot about the meeting, but I remember there's a guy, his name is Dick Dolmage, and he's since passed away, but he passed away with 15 years sobriety. He helped a lot of people, to include me. But I didn't much care for Dick for quite some time. And Dick was a retired fire captain. He was on fire for Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was a little deaf. So he was a little loud. And every morning, 7:15, 7:20, he'd go, "Hi, I'm Dick, and I'm an alcoholic." And I remember thinking, man, you got the first part right. You are a dick. Total dick. God, I hate these people. And they're smiling and they're laughing, and finally it's over, and I'm thinking, oh, thank God, it's over. And we get up, and I'm getting ready to leave, and these monkeys grab my hand. You know, and they're thinking, okay, we're praying. All right, we're praying. All right, I'll pray. I can pray. I'm praying. All right, fine. And then the next thing I know, I feel this swinging, and they're going, keep coming back. It works if you work it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've died and gone to Huckleberry Hill. These are like cretins, and I'm trying to leave, and they're smiling, and are you new, and do you have a sponsor? And I'm thinking, I am never, ever coming back here. I don't know what they're doing. They don't appear to be drinking, and I hate this. And the next morning, I was there, butt in seat. And I got to tell you, I can only tell you this looking back on it, because I don't know why I did that. It was not what I wanted to do. I've since come to believe that it's God's grace. And God's grace, I think, is there for everybody. I don't think the rain falls on the just and unjust. I think it falls for everybody. But when you're new like I am, there's a problem with the reception. So the frequency is out there, but I can't tune in without help. And it's my belief and my understanding that until I'm desperate, I won't do the work. But I had enough desperation there to at least come back. I wasn't doing the work, but I was desperate enough to come back because I didn't know what to do. And I remember I'd gone to 20 or 30 meetings, and I still didn't have a sponsor. I'd read the book a couple times, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Don't even think of calling on me, because I ain't sharing. I ain't saying anything. And I got to tell you, I've never in a participation meeting raised my hand ever in alcohol. I just don't do it, And it's just, to me, it's one of the big mysteries of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I'm here, and I didn't want to be here. And I remember my wife asked me, well, I thought you only had to go to 6 meetings. And I looked at her and I thought, with all my training and education, I've been to law school, and I looked at her and I said, shut up. I mean, because I could not explain, it made no sense to me, but there was some, I don't know, I mean, the dinosaurs, right before they were all killed off, how were they drawn to the watering hole? I don't know, but you guys are talking truth, and I detest you, but I can't resist it, because you are me. I don't want to be you, but you're me. So I'm going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sober, and I ain't too happy at all, and I'm the first one to tell you about it. And you've all told me, hey, get a sponsor, get some friends, get a phone list. There's these things called the steps. They're found in the book. We took them. You might want to take them. I don't do any of that. I read the book a couple times. I remember there was a debate, 70, 80 days in. They were talking at this morning meeting about complaining that there was too much God in the book. Too much God in the book. And I remember thinking, where the hell was that? I don't even remember reading that. Because the problem that I had when I was new is, you would talk to me, and I'd hear every third or fourth word. Or I'd read something, and someone would say, what did you just read? And I would say, Hampshire Grenadier, pot, World War II, I don't know. I think he sold stocks and he drank a lot. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't grasp anything. I was retarded. And as my sponsor was fond of telling me afterwards. But I didn't have a sponsor yet. And what happened was I went on a business trip. I had about 100 days sober, so I'm physically sober. But I don't know it. I think I'm in AA, but I'm not in AA. Because I'm not doing Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just attending AA meetings. And I got to tell you, you'll hear, just don't drink and go to meetings. Great, if that works for you, fine. It did not work for me, okay? I don't believe, based on my experience at Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, I go to a lot of meetings. I go there because that's where my friends are, that's where we hang out, that's where we harvest newcomers. They're all herded to meetings, and that's where we pick you off and corner you. That's where we stick you, Mary, in between two people so you can't get away. I mean, there's a plan here, man. But Alcoholics Anonymous is one alcoholic working with another through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, plain and simple. But I don't know that at this time. And I go on this business trip, and I go to St. Paul, and I go to Minneapolis, and I'm in Pittsburgh. And I'm doing depositions, and I have this hotel room, and I'm leaving, early in the evening to fly back to Los Angeles. And I get done, and I go change, and I'm in the hotel room, and it's got an honor bar. And I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not very honorable. And I open the honor bar, and I look at it. It's just a little mini fridge with everything you'd ever want, everything you'd ever need. And I look in there, and I open it, and I shut it. And I open it, and I shut it. And I open it, and I shut it. Because I really, really, really want it. But I've listened to you long enough to know that I can't have it. If I do this, I'm going to die. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not tomorrow. But it is inevitable, because I'm the kind of guy that goes out for milk, and I see you 3 days later, and I don't have an explanation. I don't have an explanation. It's what I do. It takes me, and I go. Willingly. So I'm pacing back and forth, and I don't call intergroup. I don't call central office. I don't call anybody. I don't call sponsor. I don't do anything. I'm 100 days sober, and I'm totally insane. And finally, I open up the minibar, and I drink everything in the minibar. Everything except the alcohol. All the sodas, the water. I drink the tonic water, which sucks without gin. And I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's there. And then I'm arranging the domestics and the imports because I'm thinking, I'm drinking this, And I'm watching TV. I'm flipping back and forth. I'm going back and forth between religious TV and porno, and back and forth and religious TV and porno. And that's not so bad, but I'm getting confused, And finally it's time for my flight. And I haven't drank, so I'm a little bit relieved, but I'm just out of my mind. I'm out of my mind. And I go to the airport and I'm flying back and I got a plan. I got a plan. And it's my belief, I've talked to enough guys that are new. If you're an alcoholic, you're face down, buns up in the gutter, if you got one eye open, you got a plan. We all had a plan. And they're usual doozies. I mean, they're just unbelievable. And this was my plan. I'm going to go back and I get, the next morning I open up my kit bag that I had from the Army. I take everything out and I take all the demo and all the weapons out that I've since gotten rid of, and I pull out 13 passports that I've acquired and I'd used for God and country when I was in Special Forces, different countries, my photograph, different names, that I'd neglected to turn in because they, like the demo and the weapons, could have come in handy someday. I mean, you never know when you're going to need that stuff. And I've got my tourist passport, and I lay out the 13 illegal passports and my tourist passport, and my plan is I'm going to get my tourist passport, I'm going to fly up to British Columbia. I'm going to leave the country under my name. And then I'm going to start working my way east on the other passports. I'm going to go to England, I'm going to go to Germany, I'm going to come back through England, I'm going to get to British Columbia. By the time I'm in British Columbia, Steve Lamb will cease to exist. Now, I got a wife and I got a kid. Do I think about him for a minute? No. A second? No. I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, I'm self-seeking. I'm not proud of this. This is a big part of my amends process. But all I can think about is me, and this is what I want to do. And I get everything laid out. The 13 passports that I should have turned in are all current. They haven't expired. My tourist passport is expired. And I'm beside myself. I'm just beside. I feel I can't do anything right. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, man, I just can't believe it. And now I've since come to learn, this is pre 9/11. I could have flown. I'm so retarded. I could have flown to British Columbia on my driver's license. I didn't even need the stuff I thought I needed to do my plan. That's how stupid I am. But that morning I'm sitting there and I'm looking there and I'm almost in tears. And what happened was I looped in the back of my brain one of those stupid, pathetic AA sayings that I just hated. And what I heard in this group in the morning lot was, if your ass is falling off, put it in a bag and take it to a meeting. I don't even know what the hell that means, okay? And I'm thinking, there's not a bag big enough for my ass, okay? But it has something to do with going to a meeting. So I go to a meeting, and I'm there at the meeting that morning, and there's a guy named Jim Nisbet, who has also since passed away with 15 years sobriety. He was my grant sponsor before he died, and again, I did not like Jim. Jim was about 6'4", 6'5". He was also in the Army. He was crazy, and he was a book thumper. He was a step Nazi, and he talked about sponsorship almost 24/7. And that morning he was talking about sponsorship, and he was talking to everybody. And I'm sure it wasn't as violent as I thought it was, but it felt like he was just talking to me. And what it felt like was going on was he was going, "You got a sponsor? You! If you don't get a sponsor, man, you're gonna die." I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was crazy, man. I had a grenade around my neck. I came with a gun. I came with a knife. I worked the steps, I got a sponsor, I found God, and look at me now. And shortly after that, he said, if you want what we have, join us. And I'm thinking, no, you're nuts, man. I don't want anything. But I'm thinking, I can't stand what I've got. I can't stand it. I mean, I'm looking in the mirror, I don't know who I am. And I got to tell you, if you're new, God bless you. I hope you're desperate. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be cruel. But my experience is it wasn't until I got desperate that I was willing to take the steps that I believe are necessary for me to stay here. And that's to go to another man, to ask him to sponsor me, to take his direction, to take the steps, to get to a position in my life where I can turn around and put my hand out to the next man and work the steps with him. Because I really didn't learn that much the first time I did it. It was actually through working with others that it came true for me. That's where I frankly became a true believer. But at the time, I didn't know that. At the time, I'm thinking, this sucks. It just sucks. And if you're new and you're thinking, this sucks, yeah, you're right. It does. It does. It's like the price of admission. Nobody comes in here like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm going to come to, we come in with arrows in our butt, our ass is on fire, we're belligerent. I've had most of the guys that I work with, they hate it. They hate it, but they have no other option, no other choice, and that's where I was. And that's where I was that morning. And what Jim had said is, if you need help getting a sponsor, come talk to me after the meeting, and I'll talk to you. And people have talked about sponsorship, and there seemed to be some inventory process and selection and maybe an interview or 2 or 3. And so I went up to Jim, and I looked at him right in my shoes because I couldn't look at him in the face. And I said, Jim, I heard you talking about sponsorship. And I thought, yeah, it's been about 100 days. I thought maybe I should get a sponsor. And Jim looked at me and said, oh, please, you are pathetic. And he grabbed me and he took me outside. And he introduced me to a guy I'd never met before. And he said, Michael, Steve, Michael, sponsor, sponsee, go with God. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. I mean, this is, I don't know this guy. I mean, this is not right. There should be a selection process. I mean, I've got real problems here. I should be able to interview this guy. Seems younger than me. I'm looking at him. What is this? He's got this lazy eye. It's wandering over to the right. What's going on? I mean, is he talking to me or is he looking at her? I don't know what the hell's going on here. And again, I'm new, so I'm hearing every 4th or 5th word, and Michael's reaching in his pocket, and he's grabbing a card, and I remember he says, do you have a book? I said, yeah, I got a book. He says, good, you're going to need it. Be at my house Monday, 6:30. And I'm thinking, there's no way, I'm not going to do this. No. That's not what I meant when I said that to Jim. And what I said was, okay. And I remember I said, okay. And I remember thinking, who the hell said that? I mean, and the reality is that was my first step in recovery. I actually did some written work after that, but that was the moment in time where I admitted that I wasn't just powerless over alcohol. My life was unmanageable. Because if my life isn't unmanageable, I don't need you to help me. I don't need you to walk me through the steps. I don't need you to guide me. I don't need your experience. I don't need your strength, and I certainly don't need your hope. But if I'm not only powerless over alcohol, and after a few years I realized over just about everything else, and if my life is unmanageable, I need some serious help here. I need a guide. I need somebody who's walked through the forest and can point out the low-hanging branches so they don't take my head off. That's what I need. And that's what he did. We met every Monday night. 6:30, we got the book open. We started at the beginning. We read. When we got to a step, we worked a step. When we had a prayer, we did the prayer. We augmented it with a 12 and 12 when it got to 6 and 7, because there's very little in the big book on 6 and 7. But it was primarily out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he spent a lot of time with me, And God, Michael was my sponsor then. He's my sponsor now, and I just love him. And it never made any sense to me. He's making all this time for me. And I remember, we're doing about a step a week until he gave me the instructions for the 4th step. And I'd been around a little while now, a few months, and people have been telling me about these long things they're writing, and it seemed like this could take a year or so. There was no big rush. And so I'm really looking forward to a break, because we're doing stuff, and it seems like I got to write stuff, and we're doing stuff every week. And he gives me the instructions, and he says to me, okay, we're not going to meet again until you get this done. And so I said, well, okay, that'll probably be quite a few months, right? He said, no, you and I have talked. I've told you a little bit of my story. You've told me your story. Yeah, you're not really that interesting. I think 2 or 3 weeks should be sufficient. I'm thinking, geez. But, Fernando talked about it. You'll hear, let us love you until you love yourself. And I remember I said, Michael, where's the love? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I keep hearing, let us love you until you love yourself. He says, where the hell is that in the book? And I said, well, I don't know. It's nowhere in the book. There's a lot of stuff you hear it's not in the book. He said, you might as well say, let us laugh at you until you can laugh at yourself. That's more accurate. So I did the assignment, and I did it the way it's outlined in the book. I had a regular inventory, I had a sex inventory, I had a fear inventory, and I was a bit concerned about it, and I met with him, and I'm going to read my inventory. And it was about 3 weeks. And we're sitting there, and I'm sitting on the couch, and he's sitting in the easy chair. And, if you're a cat person, God bless you. I'm not. I'm better now, but I don't really like them, which means that they see me and they go, oh, let's screw with him. Let's, and Michael has a cat, Yoshi. And Yoshi is really a demon. Yoshi I come in and Yoshi's like, oh, great, and crawls up on the back of the couch against my neck, leans up against my neck, and I'm doing my fifth step in this, you know. And I'm thinking, man, I just want to throw this cat against the fireplace. But Michael probably won't like that. So I'm just reading. And I get through the regular part of the inventory, and I get through the fair part of the inventory, and this takes a little while, maybe about an hour and a half. And Michael also pretty much taught me, as I do with my guys, really I'm interested in subject-verb noun. You know, you want to write a book, fine, write a book. But all I need is subject-verb noun. I need, you know, what people, places, or things you're resentful about. What's the cause? 1 or 2 words is fine. What does it affect? Does it affect your self-esteem? Does it affect your personal relations? Does it affect your ambition? Does it affect your pocketbook? Does it affect your sexual relations? And then let's look at the cause in relation to where you were at fault, where you made a mistake. Not your part. It doesn't say anything about being a part. It says, where was I at fault? What was my mistake? Where was I selfish, self-centered, self-seeking? Where was I dishonest? Where was I unwilling to accept that someone else could be spiritually sick? You know, that's all I wanted. So it's just all these little bullet points. And then finally we get to the sex inventory. And, you know, frankly, it wasn't that interesting, but I was very concerned about it. I really was a little embarrassed about it. And, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm kind of pausing a little bit, and Yoshi's tail starts going like this in front of my face, you know, and I'm like, oh man, this is not exactly the spiritual thing I'm thinking about. And I look over at my sponsor, and again, he's got this lazy eye, his right eye, and when he gets tired, it starts going over to the right, and it's going over to the right, and thinking, oh great, man, he's falling asleep. Okay, so I'll speed up, I'll talk quick, and I'll get through this. So his eye is going off to the right, and I'm starting to pick up speed on the sexual inventory. Yoshi jumps down off the back of the couch, gets out on the floor, and starts going, next thing I know, this huge hairball comes right out on the carpet. Michael's like, whap, you know, I'm paying attention now, you know, and I'm looking at him, and he goes, oh, Yoshi does all the time. Heard a lot of fifth steps. Don't worry about it, you know. So I finally get through this, and you know, and again, I don't know what to expect. You know, I don't know if I'm supposed to have a spiritual experience, burning bush, white light. None of that happens. But Michael says to me, he gives me the instructions of the book, go home, get quiet, review what you've done. Take about an hour. There's a couple paragraphs on that in the book, and I read that and I did that. And I felt like, you know what, I'm here. You know, I've paid the price of admission. You know, I'm a member. You know, I've done this. And then we worked through 6 and 7. In the 8th step, we made a list, and we got to the 9th step, and he had me do proposed amends. And I got to tell you, if you're in the amends process, I did a lot of these, I did them wrong. And even though we'd gone over them, and he said, this is what you're going to do, I didn't do that. And one of the things that he did was when he asked me to make a list of proposed amends, I did that, and I came to him, and he said, okay, what's the first one? And I explained it, and he said, well, why do you want to do that? I said, what do you mean, why do you want to do that? I said, why do you want to do that? I said, well, if I make that amends, she'll forgive me, and it'll be okay. And he said, is that the point of the amends? And if you've done the amends, you'll know that's not the point of the amends. I mean, some people will talk about it, they'll talk about it like it's an apology. I don't know about you, but my sponsor said that that's not in the book. It may include an apology, it may not, but the point of the amends is to try to do something so that it alleviates the pain that you've caused to that person. You're supposed to try to mend the harm that you've caused to them. You make an amends. They may not accept it. That's none of your business. It's 1 amends per customer. But your job is to make the offer. And if, you know, don't apologize if you're just apologizing so you want to feel better. And that was a very difficult thing for me. You know, I mean, I thought I got the part about it's nothing about them, but that part was very difficult for me. And finally, you know, I'd made some amends, and I went back to make amends to my mom. And I go back to Vegas, and I make amends, and strange coincidence, I seem to talk a lot, and she listens, and it was terrible. It was not an amends. It didn't feel right. I didn't listen to anything she said. I pretty much complained about how she treated me as a kid. It was ridiculous. And I came back to Michael and I said, I can't believe I did this. I mean, you told me and I didn't do it. And she opened her mouth, and next thing I knew, I was off and running. He said, hey, don't worry about it. You'll have an opportunity. It'll come up again. She only lives in Vegas. You know, give it a little bit of time. We'll go over it again, and there'll come a time. Well, a few months later, it was April of 1999, that time came, because my dad called me and told me that my mom was dying of cancer. And she'd had cancer before. She'd had breast cancer, she'd had mastectomies in both breasts, and she'd been cancer-free for 15 years. So we're thinking she's done, everything's fine. But it's come back. And it's come back and it's metastasized, it's in the bloodstream. There's a spot on a lung, there's a spot by the spinal cord, I think by the liver. There was 3 or 4 spots, so they can't really do chemo, they can't do surgery. It's just a matter of time. So I head off to Vegas, and she's in the hospital still, and I meet with her and I talk to her all night. And she talks and I listened, and I was a son and I made amends. And one of the things that she told me was, she said, you know, Steve, it's okay, because this is all bonus time. You know, she used words that I'd used with her. I told her, she was asking me what I felt about sobriety, and I felt like I was telling her, it's like bonus time. It's like the game is over, but I still get to play. And I'm not sure why. And the rules seem to be changed, but it's just like it's a bonus time. And she said, you know, you're sober, it's fine, it's bonus time for me. I'm okay with this. And she talked a lot about dying, and she was at peace with that. And, you know, I was a little bit tweaked out about it, and I went back to my home group, and I said, you know, what do I do? You know, my mom's dying of cancer, and one of my good friends, Bill C., his dad, Gordon, died with 46 years sobriety, and he died of cancer. And Bill had just gone through that. And he said, well, what you do is you go to her, and you comb her hair, and you brush her teeth, and you change her diaper like she changed your diaper. And you hold her hand, and you talk to her, and you sing her silly songs, and you read her stories, and you watch TV with her, and you just love her. Now, that's pretty simple, right? You know, if you don't tell me that, I don't know how to do that. That is so far outside my skill set, I can't even begin to explain that to you. I'm not proud of that, but that does not come to me intuitively. But your experience is passed on through me, so I do that with my mom. And my mom and we're good to go. And my mom is telling my brother and my sisters, you know, if you have any problems at all, you go to Steve, he'll take care of it. He'll take care of you. And I mean, that wasn't happening years ago, but now it's happening. You know, I'm the go-to guy. And we're there at Christmas in '99, and we're cooking, and the whole family's down. My sister's down from Sun Valley, and her significant other, John, is there. And John and I had gone to AA up in Sun Valley. He had a few more years than I did, but at that particular time, he's drinking wine. And he's announced to the family that he's had some kind of chemical imbalance that he's figured out, and he's arrested, and he's corrected, and now he can drink like a gentleman. And I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous a few years now, and I've got enough information where I know that I'm not supposed to judge. You know, I can observe and report, which I do. I call my sponsor right away, and I said, there's a guy, Johnson. He said, it's none of your business. Remember what I told you. In between every step, it's none of your business. You know, and when we got to the 11th step and we talked about, you know, when irritated, pause. When agitated, pause. That means shut up. You can do that between every step, too. Just shut up. So I didn't say anything. But I'm watching John, and what John is doing is he's pouring the glass so it's so full he's got to lean over and go before he can pick it up. And he's walking around with it. He never loses the glass. My sister Vic is like, where's my wine glass? She loses track of it, but not John. And I understand that because when I used to drink in bars, you know, you got a bottle of beer. I'm drinking beer with Tom. I got about half a bottle left. I need to go to the bathroom. I'm not leaving it with Tom. That bastard will drink it. You know, so I go to the bathroom and instead, this doesn't mean anything to the women, but for the guys, you know, the urinals, sometimes they have a flat top, so you can sit it right on the flat top, but sometimes it's domed. So you go like this, you know, while you pee. So my teeth are all chipped, you know, so I understand what John was doing. And, you know, my mom died, and I did the service, you know, and I did the eulogy, and I took care of my dad, and you know, I about 2.5, 3 months after my mom died, I got a call, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's one of those calls where there's a lot of crying. There's tears. You can almost hear the snot flying. And it's my sister Vic, and I'm trying to, what is going on? What's the problem? And finally what she says is she explains to me that John found it necessary to take a gun, put it in his mouth, and blow his brains out. And he did that in the living room right next to her and my niece, Erin. And what I was able to tell her is I said, look, Vic, I can't tell you that John was an alcoholic, but if he was an alcoholic, he was an alcoholic of my variety. He was selfish and self-centered and self-seeking, and this was not about you. This was about him. And there's an organization that I'm aware of. It's called Al-Anon. I know about them because they seem to stalk us. They're everywhere we go. I know a lot of people who are involved in this, and as long as they don't get too close, they're a wonderful organization. Now, they are a wonderful organization. And I said, look, I know some people who know some people. We're going to get you some numbers up in Sun Valley. I want you to call. And I was able to make amends and be of service to my sister by basically referring her to Al-Anon. And she got some relief because she went to Al-Anon. And, you know, I've been blessed in Alcoholics Anonymous to have men ask me to sponsor them. And I want to tell you that it's not appropriate for me to get up here and say to you, thou must sponsor. You know, it's not. But I will tell you that my experience is that Alcoholics Anonymous didn't come alive for me until I sponsored men. It didn't. I have a wonderful relationship with my sponsor, but you know, that moment when I'm sitting there, it's 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting on the beach, and there's a guy, and he's reading his fifth step to me, and he's supposed to be drinking, and I'm supposed to be drinking, and he's not. And he's telling me his deepest, darkest secrets, the things that he said he would never tell anybody. And he's telling them to me, and I flash back to what I told my sponsor. And that distance between me and God, which doesn't exist, which is a fallacy, because there is no distance, but it's my perception, evaporates. There is no distance between me and you. There's no distance between me and God. And I have an absolute belief in God. And I do a lot of work in the 11th step, and I like the 11th step. But I got to tell you, 11 is just between 10 and 12. And the reason why I do 11 is so that I can be of maximum service to God and my fellows, so that I can do 12. Not only by working with other alcoholics, but trying to practice these principles in all my affairs. I remember I was talking to Michael about my wife, and I was referring to my wife lovingly as a malcontented bitch from hell. I mean, she was driving me crazy. And he said, look, I got to tell you, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is not about her. This is about you. We're gonna stay on our side of the street. We're not going to stay on her side of the street. And frankly, knowing your story like I know your story, if she's smart, she'll divorce you. She'll leave you. And I'm thinking, this is not exactly the kind, loving support that I thought I would get. And he said, you know, your job is to be a service to her. I want you to do one thing for her every day, and don't tell her what you've done. And don't think that there's a reward involved. And certainly don't think that there's some conversion scale so that you do the dishes and you get some sexual favor, because that ain't happening. Go to your neutral corner. You know, and he basically remember said, you know, frankly, you know, in the first year, nobody follows this, but we kind of recommend you don't even get in a relationship. I said, I'm married. He said, yeah, well, how's that going? I said, not very good. And so I kind of went off and I did my own thing, you know, and I took a lot of suggestions and I tried over time. I mean, it was probably 3 years where I was still going to a meeting every night, and Michael said to me, you know, it's probably time for a family night, maybe a date night. What's that? My experience is that I came in here at the age of 37, but I was probably mentally and emotionally 12, 13, I don't know, completely retarded. Absolutely no social skill set whatsoever. I'm a trial lawyer. I can deal with cases that are worth millions of dollars, but I don't know how to date my wife. I mean, how retarded is that? You know, I missed my high school years, you know, and I need help in all my affairs. And I don't need somebody to tell me what to do. I need someone to explain to me what they did. And what I find so compelling about Alcoholics Anonymous is a lot of times it's not telling me even necessarily what they did that was successful. You know, sometimes these old timers, you'll talk to them and you know, encourage you to do this. Tell them your plans. And they'll say, you know, oh man, I tried that. It blew chunks, man. I can't even tell you. I went, you know, I don't know that you wanted to, you may want to try that, but let me tell you what happened when I did that. Because everybody in here has done just, or not everybody, somebody in here has done just about everything. And if you know enough people, you'll find the right people. And I've been, like I said, I've been really blessed to sponsor people. And when I was in that process of complaining about my wife, you know, Michael said to me, well, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the book. You're talking about the family afterward. I said, yeah, when am I going to get the family afterward? He says, well, it looks like there's a couple chapters here. There is a solution, how it works, working with others. You haven't done any of this crap. So why do you think you're going to get the family afterward until you've done that stuff? And my experience is that's how it worked. I was okay with you, and I was okay with the guys that I sponsored, and then I was okay at work, and now I'm finally, you know, after a little over 12 years, somewhat okay at home. You know, it has taken a long, long time. You know, and now I have a pretty good relationship with my wife and my 2 daughters. And I thought the hardest thing was going to be my mom. You know, I thought how difficult, you know, what else could happen? And I was wrong. A few years ago, my 19-year-old daughter died. And it wasn't unexpected. She was very sick. She had cerebral palsy. She had a seizure disorder. But one of the things that happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous was my daughter, Ashley, you know, when she was born, one of the many things I'm not very proud of, I'm very ashamed of, frankly, is, I just didn't, she was disabled and I resented it. It took away from what I thought I wanted to do. She wasn't normal. I would sit there and drink and rock her to sleep and feel like what a pathetic piece of crap I am. And I was. And when I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I did a lot of work with Michael to repair that relationship. Because all my daughter Ashley wanted to do, she was always in a wheelchair. She was never able to talk. She would communicate through her eyes. You know, she just wanted to go to SeaWorld and let the breeze blow through her hair and, you know, tie a balloon around her hand. And we did that kind of stuff, and I could hold her and love her. And I got to the point where I realized, you know, this is a person who has never hurt anybody. I'm a guy who resented a person who never did anything to anybody. And when I got here, you know, we talk a lot about love and service. Dr. Bob, in his last pitch before he died, he said, we all know what love is and we all know what service is. No, we don't. I didn't. When I got here, I had no idea. You know, I thought love was an emotion coupled with a heart on. That's what I thought it was. You know, I had no idea that love and service are coupled together. That service is a reflection of, that is the action of love. That true love is to be of service to someone with no thought of reward. None. I didn't get that. You know, and I practiced being of service to you before I could go out and do that with my family. I had no concept of that. And I got to the point with my daughter where I absolutely loved her. You know, and it was time for her to go. She was in a lot of pain. She was in a lot of agony. And I remember talking to my sponsor and my grand sponsor, Scott R., about this, and it just, I wasn't ready for her to go. And one of the things that I had to do is I had to do some work on that about whether or not I was being selfish. My daughter was dying. She'd been in a lot of pain for a long time. And she was ready to go. Was I willing to let her go? And that was very difficult for me. And I had to look at, you know, my mistakes and my faults. And she taught me a lot. You know, and I love her. And I got to tell you, if I get nothing else in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, that's more than enough. So what does that have to do with sponsorship? There's a guy I talked to today who has a son who has cerebral palsy with a seizure disorder, whom for years he resented, absolutely resented. Now, I was able to convey to this gentleman, his name is Stephen, my experience and what I did. I've been working with him for a number of years. He no longer represents that son at all. And that's not me. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what we do, is we pass on that experience so that we can live and move and have our being in this world, because that's all I want to do. I want to live and move and have my being in this world, and that means a certain amount of action. Not activity, action. And there's a big difference. And I love meetings and I love stuff like this, and you guys are great, but I want to tell you, for me, as an alcoholic, I need that action. I need that one-on-one work with another alcoholic. I need these guys calling me and me saying to them, like my sponsor said to me, "You're gonna do what?" And we all live and move and have our being in this world, and we do things that it seems like we're not supposed to do. And a lot of the free world out there, they don't know. They don't know, and we don't need to tell them. So if you're new, again, I hope you're desperate. I mean, you look in the mirror, you don't know who you are, you're out of options, you're ready to take direction. And if you've been here a while, you know, I ask you to consider keeping your hand out to your left and your right. You know, because there's a man or woman out there that really needs you. And if you're like me, you probably need them even more than they need you. Thanks for having me up here.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.